Good morning, everybody. Bonjour à tous. Welcome to the session Voices for a Stronger Democracy. And ironically, or maybe symbolically, I've lost my voice. But can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Woo! So, 2024 is a massive stress test for democracy. Hands up if you have an important election in your country this year, including the European elections. This year is a historic year. More than half the world's population have elections this year, 4.2 billion people, more than ever before in history. And this is against the backdrop of the ecologic catastrophe, of the rising authoritarianism, far right. So this is a critical year, and I think a really important session at ChangeNOW. I'm Nick, I'm your moderator for today. I hope I can make it through the full session. In my work also at ChangeMakerXchange, we support many young activists and democracy innovators who are trying to reimagine, renew the democratic system. And I think we have the absolute perfect person for our first keynote today, who is the Deputy Minister for Democratic Renewal in France, Prisca Thevenot. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I think the sound is okay. My voice is much more better than you, and I hope you're going to be very well very soon. But actually, if I'm here today, it's not about saying that we just need our voices to speak loud, to change the world. We need a new mindset. And actually, my name is Prisca. I'm mother of two. I'm 38. And much more than being Minister of Renewal, I think I know you. Yes, that's a good thing, because I think I know you 10 years ago in previous life. And you know, everyone can meet again to change the world and make things together. Christine, sorry. My mind. Actually, I'm very delighted to be here with you. Very different smile, different backgrounds, but the same spirit. We all want to change the world. And to change that world, we have to keep in mind that there is no age to do that. There is no actually voting right to be able to move things. We just have to implement a new way of doing things and make everyone able to speak loud. And actually, I'm right now Minister of Renewal, but former I was secretary of youth, of young people. And by definition, young people do not have the right to vote. But they can change the world, and we have to let them change the world. And particularly in France, what we've done, is to make them able to learn how to make them understand by different kind of things. First of all, in school, we double the hours of civic education to make them able to get involved in association, in the street, in their background, social life, in their family. And then we develop an ecologic service. What is that? Is that if you are about 16 years old, you're going to be able to spend from 6 months to 1 year, paid by the state, to do in a public or private organization something for climate change. I think that it can be easy to think about it, but for people to be able to act as, it's very, very, very important. Because it is able for everyone, it is very easy for everyone to get on stage, speak loud, and say, right now we have to get up and change the world. But you have to learn to act as. And acting as is not like that. You have to learn in very young. before having the right to vote. So we developed that, and in 5 years, it's about 50,000 young people, young French people, who are going to do these ecologic services. And it's very important for us, and Gabriel Attal, the new Prime Minister, who was the former Minister of Education, was very keen of implementing, of go further on it. So what I'm going to say here is that I'm not going to take much more of your time. I'm going to let the stage for, I think, much more changing people, young people, I hope. And for my last word, it will be, I think, a loud word to thank very much ChangeNOW for this event, because we need that kind of event with no polemic, with no political people issue, to remind us that we have one main objective in common, our planet. And for that, we have to go with our young people, not to say to them, act, but to help them to act. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Prisca, for reminding us that this is a lot about a new mindset that we need. And we do indeed welcome 3 inspiring panelists to the stage now. We're going to dive deeper into this topic. And the aim of the panel is to look at, first, what are some fixes for our democratic systems? How can we renew them? And second, to look into the future of what we need to do. So it's my pleasure now to call to the stage Camille, Mayada, and Hannah. Welcome. Welcome. So, voice still doing okay? Yeah. So we have on my left Hannah, Prins, climate activist with Extinction Rebellion and Stop Ecocide, also a writer from the Netherlands. And a personal fact about her, she has 2 cats who she loves very much and has been to jail 15 times for her activism. Okay. On my right, we have Mayada Adil, young advisor to the United Nations, women's and refugee rights activist, and also, personal fact, a medical doctor and a fashion designer, so a real multi-potentialite. Welcome. And we have Camille Cronier, just doing a little move there, who's operations director at the Forum for Information and Democracy. And personal fact about him, he has a secret Instagram account where he posts unfinished songs that he writes. Now could be your chance to make the big reveal.
Not this time.
Not this time. Welcome, Camille. Okay, and first question, and we'll start with Mayada. I'd love to know a little about quick, and for the first questions, we'll keep these super sharp, 1.5 minutes or so, your personal journey with democracy or lack of democracy. How has it affected your own journey?
So I'm Sudanese, so definitely lack of democracy. I was born under the dictatorship for almost 30 years. Also, I grew up in Saudi Arabia. No democracy at all. And then I've been living in France for 5 years as a political refugee. So I never know what does it mean to vote and for who to vote. So I become one of the strongest pro-democratic voices for Sudan because I believe that youth led the change in the revolution 2019, that the revolution happened in Sudan that inspired the world. It was led by women, by youth. We organized manifestations, protests. We lobbied for promoting our revolution in the world, in France, in Europe. So we did a lot of work to come to that. And I remember this place, the first event happened, it was the Paris Conference for Sudan 2022 in May, under the President Emmanuel Macron, to support the democratic transition of Sudan. And they brought the Sudanese youth voices up front to talk about this. Yeah, so that's basically it.
That's a really inspiring start. Thank you for sharing. And I think also a reminder that democracy goes beyond just having a vote and really participating. We come to Hannah now. I'd love to know a little more about how your own journey of climate activism has intersected with democracy and again, or lack of it.
Yeah, so I was already quite active in the climate movement in Holland. And then I thought, we keep on writing all these papers and we give it to politicians and then they all just go up right into the bin. And then I thought something needs to change. And then one day when I was going to university, I walked past a big protest of Extinction Rebellion and then I thought, this is interesting. What is civil disobedience? I'd never really heard of it. And then I started to research and then I joined Extinction Rebellion. And in Holland, it has really taken off in the past 4 or 5 years. So it's really become a big movement with also lots of leverage in parliament, which is great. And that, yet again, to show democracy is really more than taking a pen every 4 years and writing something down. It also means going to the streets if you really disagree with something and changing it in that way.
Brilliant. I could not agree more, and we're going to come back to that point. And then Camille, very different perspective and an equally important one around information and democracy. Can you tell us a little more?
Thanks so much. So indeed, I've been building the forum on information and democracy. So that's kind of been my topic for the last 5 years. And it's really about different voices that we have today, like Anna and Mayada, and how they evolve in a space that is now structured by tech companies in a large part, and how we can design some democratic guardrails to ensure that we have a sound public debate, a healthy information space, and that we address some of the harms that we see, would that be hate speech, online harassment, disinformation, misinformation, which are to a large extent some of the biggest threats that we have right now in our democracies, and we need to preserve information integrity if we are to preserve democracy around the world.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I think these 3 stories you've just heard paint the picture a little of where we're at. Democracy in decline since 2016, under threat and with people excluded from the process. So let's get straight to it. How can we fix this? It's the big question. Let's kick off with a big one and start with you, Hannah. How can we reimagine democracy?
So I think we see that democracies are just not fit for the huge problems we are facing today. Like in no country, it's working to really combat the climate crisis, even if there are politicians who are really trying their best. So I think citizens' assemblies would really work, where a group of citizens is chosen to talk about one subject and they can come up with really good climate policies, for instance, that work for everyone, because that's where it goes wrong all the time. Like in Holland, you have great subsidies if you want to buy a Tesla car, but there's also people who can't insulate their homes. Of course, people won't vote for better climate policy if that's the case. And that's why citizens' assemblies can bring all different kinds of people together to come with climate policy that actually works for everyone.
Awesome. Okay, so we have 1 point. Citizens' assemblies. What would you add to that, Mayada?
I'll take it from someone that comes from the global south, or like from African countries. I think we face a big issue of the militarization in African country, this is the legacy of the colonization. And what we've seen that from the Western leaders, there is some sort of support for those military institutions that threat the democratic movement and changes in Africa. And if I want to be more critical about that, I cannot understand that how Western assume the leadership of the world and they impose a democratic model that doesn't fit for the African country, because we have a different political context. As I said, we have the colonization. If you assume yourself as the leader of the world, you have to try to fix the issues that been the legacy of this colonization. And not, for instance, not to supply the arm deals that increase and agitate the conflicts in Africa. The climate crisis, of course, it's impacting the global south more in the north. I think it's just that not agnostically imposing the Western models over the African. Leave the African, find their own solution in their own lands with the grassroots solutions.
Thank you for sharing. And love the call for an African model for democracy. And as we shared in our briefing call, there is like a lot of tribal history with interesting and innovative democratic models that are very different from the Western one, right?
Yes. I think there is a good example of Tanzania. They have the first elected president. Her name is Samia Ibrahim, and she's leading this model that Tanzanian-led, African-led. They have a lot of youth in the parliament. She allowed the protest of the opposition parties and support those protesters. And she allowed more freedom of speech in the country. That's in Africa and in Tanzania, and they have their own model for that, away from the... That's a great model to take an example of, yeah.
Thank you. And Camille, okay, bringing the information perspective, how do we fix democracy?
That's a very broad question. If you're asking me personally, I would say that inequalities are one of the main challenges. If you're asking me professionally, I would just say three things. Sorry. First, we need free, independent, well-funded journalists and media that can do their work freely, safely, independently from all kinds of powers. Second, we need to address this sort of markets of idea where everything is in direct competition. And today, media or independent voices are in direct competition with all types of content, ranging from state propaganda to lolcats, all the way through recipes or disinformation, hate speech, and so on. So we need to give again, a comparative advantage to these reliable sources of information. And this then goes to how do we inform ourselves on climate change and all types of things. There is a huge amount of climate disinformation on YouTube, for example. The last thing is, and how to reinvent democracy, is really to build an information ecosystem that is fit for the future and that is fit with the, technology. And we see new technology like generative AI, going in our daily lives, just like this, with no guarantees on how it will impact democracy, but beyond democracy, again, individuals and our basic freedoms.
Yeah, thank you. And you have a big new report out on AI and democracy, right?
Yeah, we just published, there's been a 6-month effort led by a working group on AI as a public good, to set some guardrails on AI, but all types of AI, and not only generative AI that has been on the top of the news cycle for more than a year now, but also the AI that decide which kind of content and the way we produce, share, and have access to information today. This is all based on what we call predictive AI, and it will basically decide based on your personal data and what type of content you will be seeing. And all this, we need some pluralism, some basic guardrails. So we got 200 boring policy recommendations out there. I won't bore you with that, which is a pretty hefty report.
go onto their website and find it. And Hannah, so you spoke in the beginning, and Marchada too, about the important role of protests in actually building democracy. And I know you have a nice example from back in the 70s in Amsterdam. Maybe you could share a little more.
Yeah, so in 1977, 9,000 people a year died in Holland due to crashes between bikes and cars. And then protesters said, this is enough, 9,000 people in such a small country is really a lot. And then, I wish I could show you the picture, but I don't think we have it. Thousands of protesters took their bikes and lay down on the street in the center of Amsterdam because they wanted to build a 5-lane highway through the middle of Amsterdam, and they blocked that. And now we have the safest bike lanes in the world. So it's just one example of how sometimes policymakers have these ideas, like a 5-lane highway in the middle of Amsterdam, and then people who just live there and who, you know, see their family members get into crashes say, ho, 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 this needs to change. We need to move policy. And that's what happened.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And for Marchada, protests in Sudan are now turning into real practical movements to build the future of Sudan, right?
Yeah. Currently, Sudan is in war, and I'm a part of like a greater coalition of women advocacy group. We created a think tank. We basically provide technical advocacy and lobbying with a lot of like initiatives around the globe. And we're trying to create a manifesto that include women in the political processes to stop the war, to participate in peace building, and to speak about the future of Sudan, led by Sudanese people, led by the young people and women. Of course, we led the manifestation in 2019, but all the political processes for that, women been excluded. And we're trying to do that with the strong lobbies, with the strong voices of those women that works in the grassroots, and they work around the globe.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that perspective of inclusion. And I think I'd love to turn to you two now and talk a little, and Prisca also highlighted it. What do you think is the role of youth in building, reimagining democracies here? Maybe start with you.
Start with me? So this is what leaders, business leaders, political leaders like to do. They like to say, oh, you young people, we have our hopes in you. You have to change the world. And then I'm like, no, you have to do it. You are in places of power. You're the CEO of a big company. You're in parliament. You can actually change things. So I would actually like to turn it around. Like, I'm happy to be here, but I would also like to be in a bar with my, well, it's a bit too early for that, but, you know, I think we put way too much pressure on young people instead of saying, no, the people who are in power, those are the people that have to actually make those decisions.
Love it. Love that perspective. Thank you. Camille, are young people playing a role in your work also?
Couldn't say anything better than that. No, I'm sorry. No, I would... Indeed, I don't think you need to have a distinction between young and old. And, you know, sometimes when, again, on my field on information and disinformation, there is a whole things and millions born in media literacy programs. And this always goes to the young people. But when you look at the studies, the people or the age range that is sharing the most disinformation and fake news, it's 70 and beyond. There's a study by the New York University, and it's really... You know, we all have an aunt or a nanny that is spreading, oh, have you seen this? It's on Facebook. It's true. It must be true. It's on Facebook. So I think, you know, we really have to have this dialogue between generations on the information space, because young people, I feel, know how to navigate this space, and they already know that, you know, you need to make the distinction between what you see on Snapchat and what you see on some channels in YouTube.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And then coming from about youth, who are, of course, the most affected group for many of the issues that we have coming in the future, and maybe the defining nexus or intersection of our time is democracy and climate. Sudan, one of the most affected countries by the climate crisis as well. How are you seeing that climate-democracy link?
I mean, one of the strongest driver for what happened in Darfur, it's the food insecurity and the climate crisis. And that's why it's increased the conflict. It never ended cycle of conflicts. And now we have the water resources war coming up around the Nile. And we acknowledge that, but we don't have still the infrastructure to build the democratic processes. We need to stop the war first. I have to compliment what you just said about the leaders are not, they just excuse themselves, and I think they just find excuses. They know everything, and I don't feel like they have the political will to change that. I believe our generation, it's a native technology. We're not the future leader. We are already leaders now. And I believe we have the vision. Maybe we don't have the accumulated experiences that they already have, but we have the vision, we have the knowledge, we have the will to change that. And we taken that from the streets, with the people of the lands, we're making this change. And I believe it's just a matter of time that we do this intergenerational dialogue to bring more change and to work for the best for it.
Thank you for that. Getting lots of spontaneous applauses for this. This is a good sign. And we've seen this theme a lot around Change Now. I think this intergenerational justice, intergenerational dialogue. Hannah, coming to you as our timer goes to red. We spoke a lot in our preparation about a just transition in the climate crisis and about democracy's part in that, the farmer protests, etc. Can you speak a little about that and the importance of that?
Yeah, so here in the West, we're worrying about, can we still go skiing in the winter? Well, other people in other parts of the world, they're literally becoming inhabitable already. That's already happening right now. And that is something we need to address, and we need to focus on way more. So we need to work on inequality within countries, but also between countries. So within countries, I think we've seen many farmers' protests, also in my own country, who are using lots of violence. So no, their right to protest is not protected because they use so much violence. But those farmers are angry, and they're rightfully so angry, you know. The bank said, intensify, take in more cows, take in more loans. And now they're seeing, hey, that's actually not working. So a just transition means that we, I like to say, we need way more farmers, but we need way less cows. We need a transition that actually works for everyone, because otherwise people go to the streets in yellow vests. That's not crazy if the transition is not a fair transition.
Yeah, awesome point. Thank you so much for bringing that. And that brings us kind of to a point of action and what we all as individuals, what can we do to build better democracies? And I'd love to have a closing round now for each of you, starting with you, Camille. What's your call to action for the people watching today, both in general, and how can they support your work at the forum?
That's a very good question. No, I think on the information space and on my work specifically, it's just we need to raise awareness on that. And as there's been some Extinction Rebellion and some movements for climate change, I hope that one day we'll see a movement for a better information space and a healthier information space. Demonstration to fight against hate speech online, that would be tremendous. And then what you can do, well, of course, as a lot of people around here, I guess, if you have €1 million, please send it our ways. Other than that, just raise awareness, share part of the content. The problem with me is that it's very technical and it's maybe not for everybody. But raise awareness and have this discussion on the public debate and on the ethics of discussion.
Awesome, thank you so much. Where can they find more information about this?
informationdemocracy.org.
Nice, thank you. Marchada, what's your call to action and how can people support your work?
I would say a threat of democracy in the north impact the democracy in the south. What happened in the north, it affects the south, and what happened in the south, it affects the north. My call for action, we know there is an European election is coming up, and I would really ask you, all of you, because you have the right to vote, to be very considerate and very responsible, and do not take your voting right for granted, because think of the other conflict in the world. Think of the climate crisis that's impacting the global south. Think of everything, not only in your comfort, not only in Europe, in the other part of the world. When you do that, I think we can build something together and collaborative initiative to improve the life of each other in this planet. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marchada. Hannah, you have the last word.
So there's this one research that shows if 3.5% of a population goes to the streets, boycotts, writes petitions, like engages in something and stands up for something, then a revolution has never failed. So 3.5% is not even that much. So I'm not asking you for millions, I'm just asking you to engage, boycott, protest, glue yourself to the streets. This crisis is so big that things like that really need to happen. The time for just talking is done. And vote. Democracy is not perfect, but it's better than nothing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for really sharp contributions and for very inspiring calls to action. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Next up, so I'll invite you off. Thank you. Next up, it's a real pleasure to invite an absolute democracy innovator to the stage with a very unique perspective on this. Welcome, Chloé. Hi. Chloé is the CEO of Civocracy, all about citizen participation and engagement. We'll learn more in a minute. And fun fact about Chloé, the first business she founded in 2005 was a concert bar in China, when China was at that time supposedly on the route to democracy. Welcome, Chloé. Can you first give us a super quick 1.5, 2 minute insight into what Civocracy is all about?
Sure. Do you hear me properly? I'm sorry for turning my back to you guys. So yeah, I'm Chloé. I'm really happy to be here. I'm the CEO of Civocracy. We are a creative agency and a digital platform expert in citizen engagement. I've made democratic innovation my puzzle over the last 8 years. I've always been an entrepreneur, so for me, this is my way of being an activist, is like building different type of business. I think ChangeNOW is a very example that business can be a force for change. And at Civocracy, we build a platform with different modules of participation. We work with over 200 organizations in Europe, from local government, we work with national government, the EU, we work with a lot of NGOs, we work with more and more businesses, and basically all those leaders in those different type of organizations have in common that they put their community at the very center. So the main question we ask them when they want to engage their community is, how can your client, how can your members, how can citizens can actually influence what you do? How can they support you, and how can they influence the strategy?
Amazing, thank you. Can you bring it to life a little for us with maybe one example of, what's a participative campaign that has been super successful, or one example?
I mean, we equipped Friday for Future in Spain. That was really cool, around a policy on climate that they influence. We've done a lot of work with the city of Lyon before the Green Mile, actually, and help implement better climate policy using all citizens in Lyon, business, and we did so many. I invite you to have a look of our work, and basically, what I like to say is like the main ingredient to make it work is the organization that holds it. We build and we bring the strategies, we bring the tools, but without a leadership that sincerely wants to make it happen, it kind of never work.
Love that, thank you. And I love that you identify as both an activist and an entrepreneur. I think we need more entrepreneurs who are activists too.
I mean, I wish I was like Hannah. I could say, hey, I've been in jail 15 times. I think in business is not exactly the same, but yeah, I do believe that business have a great role to play today.
Okay, thank you. And you have a big new initiative around the European elections, which we'll come to in a minute.
Okay.
But first, can you paint a little picture of how important are these upcoming June European elections, particularly in the backdrop of all the challenges we're facing in Europe and the world?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the EU election, I mean, this crowd, I think, is not necessarily representative, but like a lot of people don't necessarily intend to vote. Actually, there is almost 50% of Europeans that don't intend to vote. There was a slight change in the last election with the youth that really mobilized and went out there. So for me, the big problem, especially today when in 9 countries in Europe, the polls are projecting that half of the seats will be taken by populist party, we have to get our vote out there. We have to be there and find a good mechanism for people to go vote. It's very crucial. We have the US election as well, so just imagine in a few months a world where in Europe half of the seats are taken by populists and Trump. Just make a nice mental picture in your head.
Yes, I'm not enjoying that mental picture myself, but it's certainly a call to action. Tell us about the campaign you're running, to the 906 campaign, to tackle that. So,
it was a while my team at Civocracy was asking us to do something for the election. The EU Commission prepared some workshops that we could help to mobilize people, and we're thinking, okay, we're going to do those workshops, 50 people will show up. I mean, that's nice, but I think we need to find a more powerful way with a small company to bring people out there. So in one of my insomnia, sometimes it's actually useful in January, I was thinking, okay, I think we get the mechanism. After reading an article on the very great sociologist Raphael Llorca, he was saying that today, unfortunately, companies and brands have won the power to tell powerful stories to people. Politicians are not so ready anymore. And again, I think this is the absolute priority to repair this trust between politician and citizen, but they have lost this ability to bring people to go vote and to explain our future. So, our idea at Civocracy was, what if we use this new power of influence that companies have today and turn it in a force for good? The first person I call actually are both sitting here. We have my friend Sandrine from Club of Rome and Alex from B-Lab. So we're going to do this thing together, and the idea is to build the 906 movement, which is the first brand movement for democracy. We want to build the biggest movement of companies, and together, in May, the first week of May, and the last week of May, we'll just deliver to all our audience, come on guys, let's go vote. Actually, I've made a beautiful t-shirt. So here you go. I won't strip more than that. It would be powerful, but I won't do this today. My next talk, I will. And the name of the campaign is Vote Anyway. It's a super simple, non-partisan message that brands can tell to their to their audience. They can adapt it, and it's basically meaning no matter what you want to do on 9th of June, go vote. You have a sausage party with your friend, a barbecue, you are kidnapped by a big monster, whatever beauty routine, whatever brand you are, you can use this and tell your audience, go vote anyway. Can I add one last thing? You know, I was walking to ChangeNOW this morning, and did you see just across the street, you have this luxury Italian brand who built a giant advertisement. I'm not judging luxury Italian brands. I wish I could afford some of their clothes. But I was thinking, you imagine if you can afford to put such a crazy big advertisement, and if the message before the European election, just in small, was like, sure, buy my clothes, but please vote anyway. Also, I don't know why those brands have always to use very moody-looking people in their advertisement.
Okay, thank you, Chloé, for, a call to action for companies as well. Just to push you a little on this, I know you have to stay non-partisan, but how can this campaign bring the kind of outcomes that ChangeNOW audiences care about? So better climate policies, more just, equal societies. How can it help that?
I mean, honestly, I feel like just when you talk about democracy, it's so hard to mobilize people. Like, just a call for democracy it should be on such a priority for every people's agenda. So it's one of the things, but also we have to know that the populist party are extremely well organized. They're extremely well organized, and people who vote for those parties will fucking vote, excuse my French, anyway. So this is a chance to get all the other people. And again, I don't think we are representative. I'm sure most of you will vote on 9th of June, but just talk in your next dinner party and you will see that a lot of people are like, yeah, okay, maybe, I don't know exactly why. So really, this is just a way to invite people to do in a light, non-partisan, a little bit fun way. I think we have to make this message, again, I don't want to build only narrative against also. A lot of people are doing it really well. I think this is the job of activists also to do it. As a for-profit company, I think we just say we share the same common value, which is democracy.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. And lots of signs of agreement from the audience. What would you say to anyone in the audience who's thinking, maybe companies, business should be having less influence on us, and they already have too much influence on our decisions and choices?
I mean, that's a really fair point, and I think the question is like, do companies have a a responsibility? I feel we all do. So companies are also made of citizens, employees, leaders. I think also, again, for me, the absolute priority is to repair the trust in our democracy, for politicians, for our institutions, but we have 2 months and a half. We have 2 months and a half. We have to find ways to push it and accelerate. Once we have the good leaders on board, and I really hope we're going to make it for this election, then we can go back to restore trust and like build stronger institutions. So companies have a role to play. Again, if you can afford a big panel outside, if you can afford Instagram ads, if you can afford all of this, just like turn this influence together, because the power is in numbers. If like each company do something differently, this is good, but this is like a grain of sand. If you do it together, it cannot be seen as democracy washing. It's just a matter to use our influence in a good way. But again, it's a good question. I think the limit is we don't tell you for who to vote. We don't tell you how to vote. We don't tell you Europe is good or bad. We just tell you just exert your right to vote.
Love it. Thank you, Chloé. And can you also give us an idea of what you're aiming for there? How many million Europeans are you aiming to catalyze?
I mean, I'm a very delusional, optimist person. So I'm not sure I'm the right person, but for me, the teasing I use when I reach out to big brands, and we have already like really, really nice name following us, ChangeNOW is one of them, is we think we found a way to onboard 457 million Europeans to vote. So this is the number of electors in Europe, how many people there is. I think if we can reach out, all of us together, half of it would be already fantastic. I think there is also a lot of other initiatives that are calling for votes. So if you feel brand is not the right way, like go see, like Friday for Future in Germany is doing amazing work. The EU Commission is actually, for once, have a very nice campaign about the voting. So there is different ways you can get involved in those elections.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. And yeah, I'd love to know. So we've seen, I think, a really unique perspective here. Not many people working at that intersection of private sector and democracy. Super innovative. I'd love to know now a little more about the person, Chloé, behind this. How did you come to be doing what you're doing? Share a little with us about your personal journey here.
I mean, so as I say, I've always feel very engaged in the environment I'm in. I like to take opportunity and things that excite me. For me, entrepreneurship and innovation is one thing that really excites me. The second is to build a new narrative on entrepreneurship. I think B Corp label or the zebra movement or steward ownership is just a beautiful way to do business today when you cap your profits and feed your mission, when you have like clear value and bring people on board. At Civocracy, we are all partners, so it's also a really different way to do business. I've always followed that flow. As you mentioned before, my first business was in China. I wanted adventure, and also I was delusional about like changing some things here. And I follow the path. I have to say, Civocracy has been 8 years now. It's definitely one of the most challenging and fun puzzles I've been working on. I think it's going to be a lifetime. Like really cracking the code of citizen participation is something that I hope at some point I'll leave the key to the next generation of democratic innovator to take the path. But it's the most fulfilling thing I've done so far.
Thank you. And you mentioned there delusional optimism. It reminds me of what Christiana Figueres, one of the architects of the 2015 Agreement on Climate here in Paris, shared that we need a mindset of stubborn optimism. What do you think have been some of the competencies, the mindset, the values that have helped to carry you on this journey and that all of us need in these quite dark times for democracy?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think it's hard not to be angry, and I think at some point it can be an interesting fuel to use. I cannot work only on this, me personally. I feel like building the narrative on only against, I feel it's extremely disempowering. So we were talking before about creating new stories, latching on people that are telling those stories. And I think, again, for me, my personal role model go from Jane Goodall to like also great entrepreneurs are moving around. So find the people you believe in and think you can be exactly the same, or you can try to strive for the same. So I think a dose of anger is something too good, a little bit of delusional. I think it's also some kind of like following an utopia. At least for me, it's something, it's really fuel my motivation every day.
Thank you. I love that bit of anger and a bit of optimism combined. It's a nice cocktail, I think. And yeah, so Chloé, what would be your closing message to everyone? And yeah, first of all, how can they get involved in Civocracy? And maybe you can talk to both companies and citizens, or how can anyone get involved in that? And what's your final message of action to everyone?
But first of all, let's make a new tagline like democracy is sexy. It's like really seriously, we need to make it more inviting. Every time you talk about democracy, people want to have a nap. That's crazy. So like make it and own it. It's so important. Second is I think civic responsibility lies in everybody. You can be a mom and be engaged. You can be an entrepreneur, an employee activist. You can drive a great Friday for Future organization. Whatever you do, there is a way that you can be an activist today and truly, truly engage. My call to action is, again, the T-shirts. If you come behind my back to scan this, I won't be mad at you. So, like, really come and join the movement. Of course, I would love people to see what we do at Civocracy, but like really today's puzzle, and I think for the next 2 months, is to get 457 million Europeans to vote. That's going to make a very big change.
Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chloé. That was awesome.
Sorry for your voice.
Thank you. I think everyone, you have your call to action from Chloé there. Make democracy sexy and get out there and vote and find your voice for democracy. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being part of this. Enjoy the rest of your time. Thank you.